Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
And his cousin.
And his friend Jake
gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and for the latest updates, information, and picks, you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared, and my friend Jake on Twitter at myfriend_Jake. Today's college football 2022 season preview episode covers the ACC, the Big 12, and the American Athletic Conference. As yesterday, this is the part of the show where I would usually tell you, in case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread should be for every FBS college football game during the season. I will give you that, each team's power rating, and a graded A, B, or C pick for every game available in the Google Sheets. For now, we are covering all of the conferences in college football over these 3 episodes. We're going to give out best bets again at the end over what we talk about. Gentlemen, we're back again for day 2. We survived day 1.
Just barely.
I mean, I thought it was a great episode. Anytime we're talking about college football, it's good. So no matter how many bumps in the road there might be, it's a good day if you're talking college football.
That's true. The listener, the watcher may have noticed there were a few edits I had to make there, a few bumps in the road, but hopefully it went off smooth, right? If you're catching that, you might see a little jump in the scroll, and it's like, somebody got off topic and we had to cut that out. But that's the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody forgot something, which is mainly me. I forgot something, so it's like we'll have to just edit that part out. Hopefully they'll do that. It's more fun when we just get to roll through this and there's no edits and it just is what it is.
Right.
It's a good conversation, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, before we get to today's show, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and the only way is so you can turn notifications on to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Share with a friend if you know others in the game. Hit us up on Twitter or drop a comment if you're on YouTube. We love those and try to respond to as many as we can. So let's start off with the ACC. It's interesting to me. The landscape of college football is just so crazy, and this is about the season, so I don't want to dive too much into this because if you're here looking for good season-long bets and how the schools move around in the future doesn't really pertain to that, but it is interesting. The ACC has been a conference that's kind of been in shambles, and teams have been poached from it, and what's going to happen to it, and Clemson's the only good team in it, and yet with all the chaos, the ACC is just kind of like, no one move. no one notice us, right?
Yeah.
And now there's some talk the Big Ten maybe going after a few of those teams. So who knows how that'll play out. But they've at least kind of this offseason just been kind of quiet. But, I mean, the biggest thing is Clemson's still their only team. Pittsburgh and Wake were a ton of fun last year. But the conference took a big hit when Clemson struggled. Last year, if you watched the shows, Cousin Jared, we had our favorite segment, which was Talk Me Out of Clemson. And it became a thing where the model was talk me into Clemson, talk me out of Clemson. The model was kind of hanging on to Clemson for a while, then adjusted correctly, still kind of believed in them at the end, and that worked out well. They were such a mystery last year. But I'm going to pose the question to you again. Talk me out of Clemson winning this conference. You look at their schedule. Only 3 road games in conference. At Boston College, should win that game. At Florida State, I just still don't believe in Florida State at this point yet. At Wake Forest, that's the 4th game of the season. That right there is the season for Clemson, right? I mean, they do play at Notre Dame later. It's a non-conference game, so that affects their playoff chances for sure. But with regards to just winning the conference, that 4th game of the season, they win at Wake Forest. They walk right to the title game, right? I mean, it's still kind of Clemson's to lose, right?
I don't know. I like this NC State team a lot. Right?
Okay.
Like, especially coming off that Wake Forest game. So, say that Wake Forest game's close. Clemson's got 2 tough ones back-to-back. I know NC State's at home, but I think that defense is really good, and their offense isn't that far behind.
And that's a good point. That NC State game is then next week, so you can't have a letdown spot if you're Clemson, right? You gotta finish it up. You got to go to Wake Forest, win that game in that home game against NC State. Would be a tough one right after that. Cousin Jared?
This ties in perfectly with the point I want to make about the ACC, but you go up and down that schedule. So let me ask you this question. How many quarterbacks on that schedule do you trust more than whoever Clemson's going to trot out at quarterback? Just if I'm looking at the schedule, Sam Hartman at Wake Forest, definitely trust him more. Leary at NC State, definitely trust him more. I might trust Jordan Travis at Florida State more. Notre Dame, you mentioned a non-conference game there. Louisville, I like Cunningham a lot. Miami, I like.
Churchbeck or whatever from Notre Dame, Boston College guy. I can't say his last name.
Don't know it either. So, but the point is, going up and down this list, there's a lot of good quarterbacks that they're going to have to play. And yes, their defense is great, but the Clemson, that was what we talked about all last season, right? The Clemson offense, and if they don't get something going, it's going to be really, really tough.
And that was the interesting thing about Clemson. And it's just a great point you make. Their defense still was fantastic last year. I mean, that's why we were taking so many unders with Clemson. We were taking team totals unders against them. Teams just couldn't score off of that fantastic defense. Clemson's issue was the offense. But I'm not sure, you talk about the Clemson quarterback situation not being fantastic, but the biggest issue with Clemson was their running game struggled, and the fact that the running back wasn't able to catch passes out of the backfield, just do all the things that they've had in previous years. They kind of got that going a little bit at the end of the year, which got that offense going. But you're right. I mean, that's the key. That offense was so terrible last year, and the defense held it together. But it's going to be the question again this year. Can the defense hold it together if the offense trails at all? And you said it's going to be a tough task for them for sure.
Does the defense hold up with a new coordinator? I mean, the offense too, right? They're replacing both play callers on both sides of the ball. That could be tough. And then that wide receiver room they have, whether the quarterback, you believe in whichever quarterback, Kublik or DJ, who are they throwing to? There's not any name there that scares you anymore. So I just don't think they have the offense to pull it off this year.
I think it'll be fantastic. An interesting storyline. Real quick, I get you there. I think it'll be an interesting storyline because Clemson's just dominated this conference for so many years. Last year, a huge step back, struggle. This year, it's either get back to being right and owning this conference or another down year. And all of a sudden, now you've got some question marks about is the dynasty at Clemson kind of run its course? And they might have some good years, but it's not a guarantee like it's been for the last, feels like, decade.
Yeah, I feel like we can all agree. The ACC is going to be a lot more interesting going into the year than we thought it was going to be last year. It ended up being interesting last year. The year before, right? Exactly. Yeah. And so, regardless, if Clemson runs the table, that's great. They have me engaged the ACC has me engaged for right now.
Which is the first time you could say that in forever.
Exactly.
And it's not even really because it's good football. It's just because it's competitive football.
No, it's because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. It's like the Pac-12. Who knows?
Who knows? And that's part of it, right? You want good football, obviously, but I'll take slightly less than good, but really competitive than good, but you kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, the competitive, the intrigue, who knows what's going to happen. So a lot of teams here are kind of frisky that I don't think any of them sniff the playoff. I think it'll be kind of like last year where they just all kind of beat each other up, and it'll be interesting to see which team kind of can get to 10 wins, which team maybe gets to 11 with the, with the conference title and that sort of thing. Absolutely. Cousin Jared, I'll start off with you on the season wins. Where are you heading?
So I think the thing I want to focus on, and like I said, tied perfectly into that Clemson point there, was I can't remember the last time there's been this many good quarterbacks in the ACC. So Jordan Travis at Florida State. I know we've given Florida State a hard time the past couple of years. They went 5-2 in his starts last year. Malik Cunningham at Louisville, Devin Leary at NC State, Sam Hartman at Wake Forest, Keaton Slovis at Pitt, can he turn things around? Kind of like
I forgot about
last year. Yeah. So that was a big one. Tyler Van Dyke at Miami was freshman last year, looked really good. But the one I want to focus on is Virginia and Brennan Armstrong. Brennan Armstrong was a one-man wrecking crew last year.
Absolutely.
And they bring in Tony Elliott, and you can. I think you can ask yourself, okay, Tony Elliott had a lot of good offenses there at Clemson. Did he ever have a good offense when he didn't have a great quarterback? I mean, that's kind of chicken and egg type thing, right? But I think Armstrong's really good, and I think Elliott's going to be able to do some stuff with him. But here's the thing about Virginia. There's going to be some fireworks this year, and some of those fireworks are going to be the most beautiful fireworks you've ever seen. And some of them are going to be those fireworks that go completely awry and everything crashes and burns and everything ends up being on fire.
Well, it'd be like that with that San Diego fireworks show on 4th of July that year where like all the fireworks went off at one time and it was fantastic and then it was over in like 8 seconds.
Yes, that could definitely be Virginia's season, I think. I want to be in front of my TV every time Virginia is playing this year because I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of points scored by Virginia, and there might be a lot of points scored by the other team. I think they're either going to gain 10 yards on every play or go backwards 5 yards every play. So Armstrong threw for 4,500 yards last year, 31 touchdowns. They've got a first-team All-ACC receiver coming back that had 1,200 yards on 57 catches and 9 touchdowns, a really good yards per catch there. The problem is they didn't lose one lineman. They didn't lose 2. They didn't lose 3. They didn't lose 4. They didn't lose all 5. They lost their top 6 offensive linemen from last year.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so, again, I think this is going to be either 10 yards down the field or they're going backwards 5 yards.
That was the only question with Armstrong was, is he going to be on his feet long enough to make that long throw that he was doing last year?
And to be honest, he had to move around a lot even last year. So that might not change that much, to be honest. But the problem is it doesn't get much better when you go over to the defensive side of the ball. I do like the fact that they brought in the defensive coordinator from Air Force. I think like schematically, they're going to have a really good scheme because, I mean, you got to scheme them up right when you're at Air Force because you don't have, the big tough guys. So I trust that they're going to be sound schematically, but I don't know if they have the talent on the defensive side of the ball, to hang with some of these good quarterbacks in the ACC. I can see maybe 4 games where they're favored. And then there's a few toss-ups, and they've got a lot where I think they're going to be underdogs. And they definitely have the offensive firepower to beat some of those, but they also could just get gashed in some of these games and lose some they couldn't. So I think Virginia is going to be appointment television this year. I think you're going to want to watch every time they're on the TV. But could I tell you exactly what's going to happen? Nope, I don't think so. But I just think it's going to be really entertaining.
Yeah. So first off, shout out to Armstrong last year.
Yeah.
One of the toughest things I've ever seen. Breaks his rib, gets up, walks off the field, and you can see him mouthing to his coach, "I broke my rib." And sure enough, he did. And I'm like, If I had a broken rib, man, I said this last year on the show. I was like, if I had a broken rib, I would be on the ground screaming. Or not screaming because maybe I'm in pain, just lying there, just not moving. He just walks off like, I broke a rib.
Yeah. Tough dude.
But you talk about their schedule, and it is fascinating. They should win against Richmond at home to start the season. Week 2 at Illinois is going to be a very fascinating matchup there.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't wait to break that one down. Then they get Old Dominion at home. Old Dominion, they'll be favored in that game. They should win that game. But Old Dominion was frisky last year. Yeah. And then to close out the season, the second to last week, they get a home game against Coastal Carolina, another non-conference game that they're home. They should be favored, but Coastal Carolina was really good too. Like
Virginia's run defense against Coastal Carolina, not a good matchup for Virginia.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like they could lose. Like they shouldn't lose 3 of those non-conference games, but like if they did, I don't think anybody would be too shocked. I mean, it's not the easiest non-conference schedule. Syracuse, we talked about that being a tough place to play yesterday.
Yep.
They have to go on the road there at Duke. They probably win that one.
Yeah.
Home against Louisville, like I said, that's definitely gonna be a toss-up game. At Georgia Tech, on the road, I mean that's another toss-up type game. Home against Miami, Miami's solid. Home against North Carolina, they're solid. Pitt, they're solid. At Virginia Tech, like it's hard to see. You can't count that many games where you're like they definitely should win that one. It's a lot of coin tossing type games, and it's a lot going to depend on the kind of like you said, how that offensive line holds up. And that defense, you got a lot of question marks. You need a lot of things to go right, or else they're going to lose a lot of winnable games there on that schedule.
Looking at the schedule, I was really surprised that the 7.5. That number was at 7.5. Like I get the juice on the over, but I was thinking this would be more 5.5, 6. Based on because it's mostly toss up. Because their schedule breaks kind for them a little bit since they get most of their tough opponents at home, but.
It breaks one of 2 ways. Yeah, either they get over the hump, the line looks great, the defense surprises us, and because they get all those tough games at home, they win 9 or 10 games.
Yeah.
Or things don't break right for them. And this way, as a Baylor fan, I've had several years of this where you look at the schedule and it's like it's ups and downs where you're like, well, we got the tough teams at home, which means either we're going to win those and we can beat the weaker teams on the road, we're going to win 10 games, or you go, well, now great, we got the tough teams at home. We're not going to win our home games, and now we're not good enough to win those games on the road. We're going to lose all of them. It's like a very dichotomous. You're going to win 10 or you're going to win 5, and there's like no in between. And I'm like kind of like you. There's too many question marks to feel confident that they're going to get to that 9-win mark. Which it's like I said, I think it's either 9 or 10 or 5, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's all we had for them. Jake, I know you want to talk about a few of them. We'll start off with Louisville here.
All right, Louisville, I think this is absolutely terrible for them. They are so dependent on Malik Cunningham. It's just bad. They've lost, I think their top 5 pass catchers, most of their line. then they have an unkind schedule with who they've got and where they go. It's just not going to go left. And then they lost their offensive line coach in the spring. Their wide receiver coach is gone with their other receivers. Like I'm sorry for Malik Cunningham. He's a great talent. He is going to have to do so much running the ball, I think, here. And that one injury, like not even out, like he can just go hobbled for half a game, and I think that game's a loss. If he's not on top of his game, they're done.
And we talk about scheduling a little bit too. It's some of these schedules just kind of blow my mind.
Yeah.
You know, at UCF, that's going to be a really tough one. At Kentucky, that's going to be a really tough one. Obviously, they play them every year with the rivalry, but then you got James Madison at home. Again, another one like we talked about North Dakota State, like not an automatic W.
What are you doing? I don't understand.
Like confident coaches going out there like, we got, and then not realizing that they're going to be on their fourth O-line coach in 3 years.
Yeah, like they should be favored in that game, but they're not. They shouldn't just roll over James Madison. Like the spread on that game when it comes out is going to surprise a lot of people. Like James Madison's a really good team, and it's one again they should win, but it's not a guarantee. And that's like when you have your one AA game, you want it to be a guaranteed W. You don't want it to be like if something goes wrong. Like James Madison is that type of FCS school that could go on the road and win, and you'd be like, yeah, I guess they're really good.
I mean, it's just what I said. Like I just don't think this adds up to anywhere near 6 wins for Louisville. It is just a tough road to hoe for them right now.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you want to hear my thoughts on the Sun Belt East, where James Madison is now part of the FBS, tune in tomorrow because I will break down the Sun Belt East for you and tell you why I think it's one of the toughest divisions in FBS this season.
That's happening this year? I completely forgot about that.
That is happening this year.
I didn't know when that was happening.
I can't remember the timing of these things. Well, so I can't wait to hear that just because my take on these FCS schools coming up is like that first year, they're still kind of like where they were because they haven't really recruited at that level, that sort of thing. But I mean, they were a very good FCS school. And when you look at the people, there's a couple of metrics out there. I don't have FCS rankings. I don't pull that data in, but there's a couple of people who do. And the top teams like the James Madisons of the world, the North Dakota States of the world, always rank like in the middle of those bottomish tier FBS school, so they're not going to come in year one and go 2-10, right? I mean, they're a good team.
I was honestly surprised they made that jump. Like, maybe I don't get the money aspect, but they were constantly competing for a championship there, and it's going to be. I don't know that they'll ever get to a championship playoff run with the Sun Belt like this. So it just kind of.
I have to assume it's money.
Yeah.
I mean. All right, North Carolina State, Jake, what do you got for us there?
Like I said, this defense is very good. They played very well last year. I think the over is going to hit on this fairly hard. This is a very, very good team. The schedule goes the way they need it to. They've got a good quarterback. They've got good talent around him. I mean, if Devin Leary can repeat his performance at like 90%, they're going to win 9-10 games, I would think. I mean, the only truly tough game they've got is at Clemson. Other than that, everything kind of bolts well for them. And
at Syracuse, and that North Carolina will be tough.
Yeah. Well, I just don't have a lot of faith in the Syracuse team. I know going there is tough. I just don't think that.
A team that coming
used to going there by now.
Yeah, but Syracuse coming in, I have no worries about. Going to Syracuse is always weird things happen in there. I mean, that's Clemson.
If that game's on a Thursday or Friday night, just beware.
Right, no, it's on a Saturday. But I'm with you. Thursday, Friday, it's
all right.
Weird things happen.
But I mean,
and they have a game
that they were in the championship out of this division. Like they were there. I don't know if they'll win it.
It's their third game of the season versus Tech, a game that would be much more difficult if it was in Lubbock, but at home, it's going to be a whole lot easier. If that game's at Lubbock, it's like you circling that one, you're like, ooh, this is going to be a tough one. But at home, a much not a guaranteed win, right? But a much easier task than traveling to Lubbock, which is another place that's very tough to play.
That's what I say. Like their schedule breaks for them the right way. This could be the year they make a real move, and I kind of like them to do it.
All right, and then Miami was the last one you'd highlighted for us.
Yeah, well, this is really Cristobal and Tyler Van Dyke, right? Like that combo is going to be, I think, really good if you look at those Oregon teams. And like when Van Dyke started the last 9 games there, and I think they went 6-3, and they were putting up points like crazy. They're only getting better. Pitt at home I think it's the last game or next to last game of the regular season for them.
Last game.
Last game. That's probably deciding the division. But like I'm really interested in on week 3 there, Jared.
I was gonna say like we got to get cousin Jared here talking about what's his prediction for Miami and Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. I think
put me on the spot here.
See, we haven't talked the SEC yet, so y'all don't know how I feel about A&M.
We don't.
I think that's going to be a well-contested game. I think the A&M defense is going to be really good. I think we'll find out how good Van Dyke is that game because I think in College Station at Kyle Field, he could struggle. Yes. Do I trust A&M to score a lot of points? Not sure. But I think that's going to be a good game. It's one of those after a couple quarters, based on how he's played, you're going to know how the game's going to play out.
It sounds like your early lean, months ahead of time would be the under. Is what you're saying.
You know me too well. Really.
Hey, caveat, right? All about the number, right? I mean, if the number is 42, it's a whole lot different than the number 62, right? It's a different one of those two numbers. But
exactly.
I mean, Miami rated Clemson's best receiver with Frank Landon, and then they got Parrish from Ole Miss. So they've got skill talent around Van Dyke. They finally got rid of the Derek King experiment because I don't think that was ever going to work out well. I don't think he was as talented as they wanted him to be. But Van Dyke is it. This is kind of like if I'm sprinkling money around, I kind of put a little bit on Van Dyke for the Heisman, but because I think Miami could make, like if they get Texas A&M and they get Clemson on the road and they win the ACC, there's an argument for them for the playoffs. So there's a lot of ifs. And then if they're doing that, means Van Dyke's having an incredible year. So if things break right, I mean, I think he's like plus quite a bit for the Heisman. So a big fun payout. But
all right, and that.
I was just going to say, I feel like you're optimistic about Miami. I just find it very difficult to bet the over on any ACC team. I find it much easier to just hope an ACC team doesn't play well. I feel like that happens more often than an ACC team playing really well, unless it's Clemson. But again, this is a little bit of a new world that we're here in with the ACC right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's a new world. And it's one of those things where every year in the ACC, somebody besides Clemson does do well and wins 9 or 10 games. And that's all you got to get to for NC State or Miami. The question is trying to figure out which team or teams is going to do that is the hard thing. So, hey, Jake's calling a shot here. Says those are the two that he thinks are going to do it. So, right?
That's where I'm putting my money.
All right. So on to the Big 12 conference. The Big 12/10/12/14/ I don't know how many they're going to have eventually. We kind of talked about this.
Why you don't put numbers in your conference name.
That's why you don't put numbers in your conference name. They did, I'm pretty sure, trademark like every big number outside of 10 once all the realignment stuff was happening the last go around because they were like, well, just in case we decide we want to be the Big 14. They were like, it's just a few bucks. Let's just copyright all that stuff. I'm pretty sure that I don't know if that happened or not, but that was the story that was circulating. A conference title game last year with Baylor and Oklahoma State. I was at that game. I was at the end zone where the final stop happened. I swore he was going to get in. I think everybody else in the country swore he was going to get in. That was an incredible play. Fantastic game with regards to the intrigue at the end, but very terribly played. And it begs the question, can Oklahoma get back to the Big 12 conference game? They tended to be in it every single year. They tended to win the conference. They tended to go to the conference championship game, one or the other, every single year. There were a couple years when there was no conference championship game when that didn't happen. But for the most part, it's been Oklahoma's conference. We all know that. This will be maybe the last chance they get. They might have another year next year. It kind of depends on how the negotiation goes. The odds right now for Oklahoma are plus 190 to win that conference title game. They didn't make it last year. There's a lot of turnover this year. There's a lot of things happening in Norman, obviously. I don't even know where to begin talking about that because there's so many new pieces and there's so many question marks. But that they've recruited well. There's a lot of talent there. My general take from the Big 12 is every team's going to win 8 games except for Oklahoma, who will win more, and Oklahoma's going to be in the conference title game. That's just the way I see it. I'm not an Oklahoma fan, but I feel like that's the way it goes. They just have more talent than everybody else. Texas every year is back, and then they're not. I mean, it's one of those, we kind of have – I'm just wait and show it to me, right, until I'll believe it. I'm not sure much has changed there. Baylor, probably won't be quite as good as last year. Oklahoma State probably not quite as good last year. To me, this feels like Oklahoma probably gets – it helps the fact they don't have divisions. In the divisions, you do have to make sure you beat the right teams. Oklahoma doesn't have to worry about beating the right teams. You have to make sure they don't get kicked out in a tiebreaker or something weird like that. Oklahoma will lose some random regular season game that they shouldn't, because that's the way it goes. But I kind of personally like this plus 190 to win the conference title game. Gives you some options to hedge out because they should make it. And when they get there, they're probably going to be minus odds. And then you can either let your bet ride or hedge the other direction. I'm curious what you guys think about some sort of play like that, just thinking that OU's probably going to be the class of the conference, even though they didn't make it there last year.
I'll let Jake take this one.
Okay. I don't have a lot of faith in Oklahoma here. I think they lost a lot. Dylan Gabriel could be really good, and he could be absolutely bad. And, I mean, there's a lot of turnover happening here. You've got Venables, who hasn't, to my knowledge, ran a whole team, like a whole thing. He's been a defensive guy, and they really need the offense to come through. So I don't know that that's going to happen. So I'm a little wary of the Sooners, especially when you've got Baylor, who's in Oklahoma State right on their tails. We've got the good offenses, and Oklahoma State seems to get it right with defense. Every once in a while, I know they lost a lot, but I think they've still got it. And I kind of lean more Oklahoma State to get this one, or maybe Baylor, than I do Oklahoma. I'm just not a huge fan of all the change and turmoil that was going on there. And then
definitely some turmoil.
Yeah, immediately popping right back to the top of everything. That just seems like a big ask for a first-year head coach.
I definitely think that Venables is going to make an impact on the defensive side. The problem is where Oklahoma's starting from on the defensive side. They've been up and down. I just don't know if he can get them to the level that they need to be at in year one. And I think Dylan Gabriel's probably going to be pretty solid. I think Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator they got, is really good as well. But if Lincoln Riley is what I think we all think that he is, there's going to be a step down. You can't just take somebody like Lincoln Riley. And like I said, Lebby is a great offensive coordinator, but I don't think you can just replace Lincoln Riley and do things similar to how they were done before. So I'm kind of expecting a little bit of a down year from Oklahoma. And what's down for Oklahoma, 8 or 9 wins. I don't know.
Which still might be enough to get them to the conference title game.
That is true, and definitely
in what should be a chaotic Big 12 with everybody beating everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So just to lay it all out there for y'all, I wanted to break down the Big 12. I wanted to break down the middle and the bottom of the Big 12, kind of like I did the Big 10 West yesterday, and kind of show you how the tiers were going to lay out in the Big 12. And then 2 things occurred. Number 1, it gave me heartburn trying to figure out how all that was going to play out. And also halfway through, I remembered, didn't I stop making plays on most of these teams halfway through the season? Because I just gave up on trying to figure them out. So yeah, that's when I kind of got to the point, okay, well, just step back. Well, big picture, what am I thinking with the Big 12? And my head says that Baylor should repeat as Big 12 champions, but something in my gut, and I guess I'm leaning with Jake here, something in my gut says that it's going to be Oklahoma State's year. So, Professor, could you give us a little bit of a breakdown on how Baylor or Oklahoma State could win this conference again?
Yeah, it's like I mentioned yesterday, you're my X's and O's guy, I guess I'm the Big 12 expert. I watch more Big 12.
You are the Big 12 expert. Yeah.
So here's what I'll say. I think Baylor will be solid. I think Oklahoma State will be solid. I'm nervous about both teams with regards to some of the pieces they lost. And I'm nervous with regards to the fact that they were so reliant on those defensive units. I'm nervous about Baylor's offense. We saw it just really stall in the second half of that Big 12 championship game. For instance, I think both teams will be good, but I personally just have a hard time seeing how either team gets to 10 wins. I just where I see it. I see 10 being just a huge step that's just too far. I don't see for either one of them. I think Oklahoma State's win total is at 8. I think 8 seems pretty right. I think Baylor's is 7.5 with some juice on the over. I think 8's right there. So I would play Baylor's win total over 7.5. I think every team in the Big 12 wins 8 games, except for OU, who I think wins more, and Kansas, who wins less. I think everybody wins 8 games. That's obviously not going to happen. Right. Somebody's going to win 4. Probably West Virginia probably won't win 8, right? But it's one of those things where it's like I just think all these teams are. TCU is probably a little bit lower, but I mean, I think a lot of these teams are a lot closer than you realize. Like I hear because Jerry's talking about tiers and different things, and I'm like, there is no tiers. To me, it's Oklahoma's number one. Texas is like somewhere between one and the rest. They have the talent, but I just don't know if they can get it done. And then you've got just this conglomerate of teams that I'm like, I don't know what to make of them. Just all kind of bunched up in the middle there.
Yeah, see, I almost completely disagree with you on this one. I think it's Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and then, I'm not saying this because I'm an Aggie, but we've said it for a decade now. I've got to see it with Texas before
sure.
I believe it. So
a lot
to
of
me,
Quentin Ewers, who was yet to throw a pass.
That's the big question mark, is what they're going to get at quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's Oklahoma State, Baylor, and everybody else.
The difference with Texas is that they've got so much talent everywhere else that if any team can deal with that lack of experience at the quarterback position, I think it's Texas. They lost a lot of close games last year. And we talked about this yesterday with Nebraska. What does that mean? I'm not going to go out on them. I'm not going to say take Texas over or under. I don't really know. I think they're one of the huge variabilities. I think they could win 10 games and it wouldn't shock me, and they could win 5 and it wouldn't shock me. When you lose all those close games like that, how is that going to play out? Does that mean they're right there and they just got to figure out things, get a little more experience, get the system, new coach, second year, right guys, all that nonsense, right? Does that matter? And now they take that next step or not? And that's where I'm saying they just got so much talent that they're the only team that I think can stack up talent-wise with Oklahoma. I think everybody else talent-wise is a step down. Now, the coaching at Baylor and Oklahoma State is phenomenal, and that's going to make up for a lot. But there is a talent gap between Baylor and Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and Texas, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm kind of down on Texas because I think this Arch Manning thing is going to play over so many times. Hey, yours makes a bad pass. Oh, Arch won't do that when he gets here. Like, it's going to
just wait for Arch to come
every time, and it's just like, oh, that would be a terrible position to be in while you're waiting for that guy to get in, because that's all they're going to, ESPN and everything's going to talk about is Arch this, Arch that, anytime.
Sure. And that's why I said I wouldn't play Texas either way on this. I'm just saying I think Texas talent-wise is in that, like, they can compete, but they also might drop down to everybody else or even below that, just because I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm just pointing out that they have such a unique situation with the talent that they have. I'll just point out with Oklahoma, and the reason again, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but the reason why I think this is a solid investment, this plus 190, when you look at their schedule, it breaks for them. Texas, who might be decent, obviously every year's a neutral site game. Baylor in Norman, Oklahoma State in Norman. Their 3 toughest games based off of that are going to all be at home. Now, they do have to go to Tech. That's a tough place to play. They do have to go to West Virginia. But it almost breaks, like we talked about for some of these previous teams, it breaks where if they can get over the hump, Oklahoma has a chance to run the table and go undefeated. I'm just putting it out there. That's on the table if they get over the hump. Now, if they're under the hump, they have a chance to go 7-5. A lot of those games are going to be potentially going the same direction because of the way that schedule breaks.
What I get worried about is them beating Oklahoma State or Baylor twice, right? Because that's who they're in all likelihood going to meet in the conference championship, and so they've got to do it twice, or if they beat them in the regular season, and that's going to be tough.
And that's why I said too, you have the option to play out of this at plus 190 because Oklahoma probably would be favored in that game if it plays out like I think it will.
This is really like the perfect schedule for Oklahoma because you don't have to go to Manhattan, Kansas. You get Kansas State at home. It's always a house of horrors for them. It's simply when they have to go to Manhattan.
For a lot of teams.
And then they get – this is going to be funny saying this. They get to play at Iowa State. Iowa State's the only team that could beat them in Norman. And so they get to play Iowa State on the road. I think that's a big check mark. Good job. You want to play Iowa State in Ames. So, yeah, the schedule actually does, I think.
It breaks really well for them. That's why I just can't get over the fact that I think this is a smart play at these odds. And then, I think I said, at the end of the season, Jake, I think it's a good point. You worry about potentially beating the second time. You have a chance to play a little bit out of it is one option there. Jake, you do want to talk about West Virginia, though.
I like this West Virginia team. I know at the number, like I'm not saying they're going to run or get up there to the Big 12 title, but I think their schedule works out for them fairly well. They're bringing in JT Daniels, who's a good quarterback, just could never outwork Stetson Bennett at Georgia. He's going back with his coordinator, Graham Harrell from USC, so there's not going to be a lot of loss in translation there. They get all 5 linemen back, so it should be good for him to be able to stay on his feet. I think it's the first game I could be wrong, but Pittsburgh.
I was going to say, if you were going to mention it, I'm so excited to get that rivalry back on a Thursday, week 1. Oh, we're definitely breaking that one down.
As God intended. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it should be the last game of the season, but whatever, I'll take it. I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it opening the year. Give it to me. Give me something.
Yeah, works through.
Yeah. There, yeah.
But both teams with some question marks, just playing it right off the bat. Let's just do it.
Yeah, the battle of ex-USC quarterbacks. Who would have thought?
I know, it's wild.
Wow,
what a world we live in.
Yeah,
I mean, the schedule breaks for them too. They get Oklahoma, Kansas State, Baylor, TCU all at home. So to get to that 6th win, they've got tons of options there. And that's like with over and under, you want to get a lot of options to get to your win. Like you don't want to be pigeonholed in. So I think this is I think they're a very underrated team right now, and where the odds and everything are at, I really like it.
A lot of tough places to play in the Big 12. Manhattan, Kansas, one of them. Lubbock, Texas, one of them. Morgantown, West Virginia, another one. But you talked about their schedule. You got versus Kansas, that's a win. Versus Towson, that's a win. Home against TCU, almost assuredly a win. Home against Kansas State, a solid opportunity there. At Iowa State, I'm not quite sold on Iowa State yet. Solid opportunity there. If they get those, that's 5 wins, and then you just got to find one more somewhere. And I'm not sure they'd be favored in any of the other games, but they'd have a chance in almost every other game. They won't be, 30-point underdogs or 20-point underdogs in any other game. So you're right about the over 5.5. I like that you feel good about 4, probably 5, and then it's like, then anything can happen. You just need one of the other ones to get to 6. It's not like any one of them is super likely, but you got a lot of chances that they'll be 6-point underdogs, 4-point underdogs. It's like teams win those games all the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. It just takes one crazy thing, especially when with everything changing around with all the upflux and with the top teams, like maybe be able to grab one of them and knock one of them out of the race for the championship. Like that puts the money in your pocket.
Yep. And the last one we want to talk about here in the Big 12, a team that everyone's going to be talking about, the Kansas Jayhawks.
Right. This is we talked about Arizona at length.
That's true, we did. That's true. I can't really give us crap for that. We talked about Arizona.
And Jake, we call this: you don't have to watch them to make the monies.
Yes. This is very. I very much don't want you watching this team, but Kansas brings back 16 starters.
Is that a good thing? Are we sure that's a good thing?
Well, no, but it can't be worse. I mean, if they're out beating the guy, correct me if I'm wrong, that's 5 guys that didn't start last year are going to be out there. So, we got experience going for us. Their schedule, they've got Tennessee Tech, that's a win.
That's a win.
You've got Duke, that's a win. Oh no, we just got to find one more.
Well, to be fair, okay, but what's that spread going to be in the Duke game? It's going to be Kansas minus 6. It's not going to be much.
It's at home.
They're more likely to win than not, but they will not be more than 7-point favorites in the game. I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you just got to find one more. And I'm looking at the Texas game. I think that could be sneaky.
They always play Texas
last year in Austin, and
they always get up for Texas.
Yep.
And Iowa State and TCU at home are 2 options as well that you've got. At home, both of those are very winnable games. They're not going to win in Norman. They're not going to win in Waco. They're not going to win Lubbock. And they're not going to win in Manhattan. Those are guaranteed losses. They're not going to win in West Virginia or Houston. But, yeah, Tennessee Tech should be a win. Duke, Iowa State, TCU. I mean, those are some winnable games there. And if they don't get any of that, they do have a chance against Texas there.
Yeah. So you just got to find a third one there because you're pretty much counting on those 2. If you lose one of those, let me know. They could very easily be 0-12. But I just think this would be kind of fun, cheering for the underdog kind of thing. I think it's fun. I like it. I think they're better than what you expect. They're on the upswing. It really wouldn't surprise me if they grabbed that 3rd, maybe 4th win. And
who is the coach at Kansas again?
I can't say his
Lance
name.
Leipold.
Yeah, Leipold.
Okay. Where did he come from again?
Buffalo,
that's right. I was I remember it was a hire that was kind of intriguing because of some previous success that he had. I couldn't remember exactly, but okay.
Yeah. So, maybe it could, I don't know. I'm going to be cheering for him because I think it's going to be fun to watch the team minus 2.5 try to.
For whatever this is worth, I'd definitely be leaning to the over here as well.
Even the juice tells you that the over is the more likely.
There you go. Well, moving on to the American Athletic Conference, the conference that maybe Kansas should belong to. Maybe they'd feel more at home playing with those teams. And the conference that's going to send some of their teams over to the Big 12 going forward. They obviously were the talk of college football really last year, with the exception of the SEC. You know, two great teams in Houston and Cincinnati. Houston blew that game. Was it SMU in the middle of the season? I think it was that they lost by one score. Whoever that was, and if it wasn't for that, we would have had two undefeated teams in the conference title game there at the end. It was still a great game. Cincinnati, of course, a fantastic season. Played as well as we've seen any of these 4 seeds and sometimes 3 seeds play in the playoff, hung in there for a while, never really had a chance, but that's kind of the way this thing goes. But I mean, A great effort by Cincinnati, a great story. And the same 2 teams will be at the top of the conference again this year, Houston and Cincinnati. Obviously, nothing against Central Florida, who's a solid team. SMU will probably be solid again, but I mean, it's really all about Houston and Cincinnati, right?
I definitely think it's all about them. But I would be remiss if I didn't tie this back in with our last conversation about the Big 12. I need the Big 12 to do everything in their power to not let Texas and Oklahoma go, because in 2023, I want to see the 16 team or whatever it would be at that point, 14 team, 14 team Big 12. I want to see UCF and Oklahoma play. I want to see Texas and Houston play. I want to see BYU and Kansas State. So many potential good matchups, I think, if we can get all of those teams in one conference together for one season. So that's my soapbox. I will get off of it. But I definitely think, far and away, Houston is the team that's going to win the conference this year. You mentioned the one game they lost last year. That was the first game of the season. It was Texas Tech here in Houston.
That's what it was. And they were ahead. They were ahead at the half.
Blew a big second. Yeah, they blew a big second half lead.
I was like, I knew they blew a game. I just couldn't remember what it was. I was like, they sure won. Wrong Texas school.
Yeah, and then they won all of the games after that until the conference championship game against Cincinnati. Still had a great season, only those 2 losses. And the thing is, number one, they're returning all of their offensive production from last year, basically all of it. Alton McCaskill, very good running back, scored 16 touchdowns for him last year, tore his ACL during the spring. So that's not good. I think they can replace most of his production with the guys that were there. They added somebody in the transfer portal. So I'm not as concerned about that.
That's what they've done. They've continuously lost players and continuously somehow replaced them. It's like they're the rare team. You're talking about teams going up. We talked about with James Madison going up from FCS to FBS. You're talking about teams going from, the Group of 5 to the Power 5. And usually there's a little bit of a delay of, we saw this with TCU when they came up. A good team, they just didn't have the depth to really compete and play these tough games every single week. It's like you look at Houston, it's like they kind of got some of that depth that's surprising. You felt like they lose a guy and the whole team would fall apart. That's what we see with the Group of 5 teams, but that's not the case with
Houston, because the basketball team did the same thing.
Basketball team did the same thing. I mean, they're set up really well.
I usually don't like to bring in recruiting talk to this, but Houston has a distinct advantage in that they can, especially with the portal now, they can have players from the Houston area go to USC, go to Oregon, go to wherever, some of these other big Power 5 schools, and decide, hey, I want to be back closer to home, be back closer to family, and they all come back to the University of Houston. So they're really
beautiful new stadium.
Yeah, exactly, and a lot of offensive talent, but Clayton Tune, the quarterback, really got it rolling there the second half of the season. So that first game against Texas Tech, I was really worried about him.
Second game this year.
Well, the first game of last season that they lost, I was really concerned.
I agree.
4 interceptions. Turned it around, played great after that. Yep. And their defense, I tried to tell everybody this last year, Houston played with a very slow tempo, and their defense was outstanding. The best third down conversion rate of any defense in the country, the best since 2018, 98 tackles for loss, a lot of returning production from that defense. I think their defense is going to be phenomenal again. And
you were all over those Houston unders last year. Absolutely.
I was. And the thing is, if you look at their schedule, so I believe the line's about 9 wins or so for Houston. And they start off the season at UTSA. So I don't want to give anything away for those that might be watching our Week 1 podcast.
Hey, that's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to that one.
I would be shocked if I'm not on Houston here. I think Houston's going to blow UTSA out of the
Really?
water. And
Okay.
I'll say that right here. I would be very surprised if I'm not on Houston.
I have to imagine
with the
I have to imagine
receivers and everything, it's going to be nasty.
No.
I mean, Houston's what would we set that line at? 7? Houston -7?
Oh no! I would probably play it up to 10. I mean,
10?
I think Houston is
not what you
much
play.
much
What do you
better.
think? What you think you'll see?
I mean, I think it's going to be.
I'm saying I think
I think it's going to be between 10 and 14.
Really?
That's what I
was leaning more towards 14.
Wow. Still no respect for UTSA after last year.
UTSA is very good for Conference USA.
They are.
So there you go. But okay, so looking at the schedule, UTSA, I think that one's a win. But let's just say at Tech, that's going to be a tough game. We've already talked about how tough it is to play in Lubbock. Here's what I'm thinking here. I think they're either going to lose that game at Tech, or they kind of avenge that loss last season. And look who's waiting for them in week 3. Kansas, our old Kansas Jayhawks there. And I think I could easily see them, coming off that win at Tech, overlooking Kansas, and Kansas giving them a big scare. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's say that they go 2-1 those first 3 games of the season. If you go back down the rest of their schedule, they don't have to play UCF and they don't have to play Cincinnati. What games are they losing in conference? You've got at Memphis. Don't get me started. At SMU. You had to have watched last season.
Yeah. But Jared had some Memphis issues last year, some heartbreaks there. But I mean, Memphis and SMU both on the road. That's gonna be some tough games.
And I think at ECU, they're also playing at Navy, but Houston is coming off a bye, so I like them a lot more in that spot coming off the bye as opposed to like coming off like a Tech game or something like that. But I think the odds of them, okay, let's say again, go 2-1 those first 3 games. Are they going to lose all 3 of those road conference games there at Memphis, at SMU, at Eastern Carolina? I think that's unlikely, and that's what would have to happen for you to lose this bet. So I think that the over 9 here with Houston is really appealing to me. And again, with all Cincinnati's going to be good, but they lost so much production. I think that for me, it's clear that Houston's the best team in the American this season.
All right, I'm going to come back to this real quick. Just as an FYI, last year, my model at the end of the season, now this isn't, I haven't done anything for this year, so I haven't built that yet. Haven't returning production priors, haven't built anything. So I can't tell you for this year. But last year, at the end of last season, I would have had Houston at UTSA. I would have had Houston as a 2.5 point favorite.
There's a bug. I think it's getting confused baseball and football. I think something's not getting entered correctly.
I'm just saying. I had Houston as the 33rd best team last year at the end of the season, and then I had UTSA as the 55th best team.
So I will admit that I'm wrong on this. But if I recall, the model had a huge affinity for UTSA. Am I wrong in saying that, or did it really like UTSA?
It liked. I think by the end of the season, I think it had UTSA. It liked UTSA earlier than the books and everybody else did. We made a lot of money on UTSA. So I think by the end of the season, though, I think it caught up pretty well. I think UTSA at 55th makes a lot of sense. I think what was happening was early on about the midpoint of the season towards the end, the model was saying, hey, UTSA is decent, and everybody else is like, no, they're still garbage. And so we were backing UTSA and they were winning. But I think by the end of the season, it caught up. The thing that's interesting here is that I've got Houston again closing last season as a 33rd best team. And again, UTSA is the 55th. I don't know where they'll stand this year. I have to imagine Houston might start off around that spot, around 33rd best. UTSA is going to drop a little bit, I think, is the question of how much they drop. But I kind of still stand by, like, if you said, without looking at anything, Houston -7 on the road at UTSA feels like a reasonable number to me. But again, we'll see. I haven't dove into UTSA. They might have lost every player in the world. I don't know.
I just think the offense on Houston is going to be a force to reckon with. I mean, Dell coming back with his 90 catches, 1,300 plus yards, and 12 TDs. Add in the transfers they got for that receiver room. Toon's got all the weapons in the world. Even with the loss of the running back, I just don't see UTSA or really anybody slowing them down.
Yeah, Holgerson almost made you forget that he was a good offensive coach. When they brought in King, and then King decided he was just going to redshirt in the middle of the season and then transfer. You almost forgot that Holgerson knows what he's doing.
Knows what he's doing. Yeah, great coach, great coach for sure. I guess that's the question: is if where do we think Houston will start off the season? And I'm not talking about preseason rankings. I don't really buy that. I'm talking about from a power rating. If you were to just say who the best team is, ignoring name on the jersey rankings, which is a little AP polls a little bit wonky, right? Is Houston a top 25, one of the 25 best teams in the country to start off the season?
That is a great question.
I think they are. When you see how they played at the end of last season and how they played Cincinnati fairly close, I think they are. But that's just me.
I don't think it's crazy at all. And like I said, the model may put them there. Like I said, I haven't run it. I don't know, but I don't think it's crazy. I think barely in the top 25 or just outside seems right.
Yeah, I was kind of leaning like 26, 27.
Okay.
Right, just like right sniffing the edge, but it really wouldn't surprise me to see them 23, 22 either.
They're another team that I think is almost like Oklahoma, where the way their schedule breaks, it's if they're just good enough, I think they run the table. And if not, I think they've got 4 games they could lose. I'm like you, Jared. I like the over with a 9 because they'd have to lose all 4 to go 8-4, and it's not as likely. I mean, even a bad stretch is they go 1-3 in those. They should take care of the rest, and then you push. So I'm with you. I think over 9 makes a lot more sense than anything else. I think it's interesting. Like I said, I think if things go right for them, this over cashes easily. It cashes, long before Thanksgiving, and they're running the table. If not, that's going to be a sweat down the stretch because the way the schedule breaks, they're going to have a hard time in a handful of those games. So it really just depends on can they get there. But it sounds like both of you guys are optimistic that they will based off of what they bring back and what they brought in.
Here's a good question for you. Do you think Cincinnati and Houston missed an opportunity scheduling-wise this year to really put themselves up there? I know Cincinnati
to schedule each other.
Schedule each other or schedule like a harder schedule because they don't have each other on the schedule.
I mean, they can't control if they schedule each other, and the schedules are all set so far in advance. I mean, teams have done this before. Teams have at the last minute decided to do something crazy or whatever, but it's really hard to find those opportunities to find another school who also went to last minute. I think yes, but it's so hard to say they can control any of this given how far in advance these schedules go. Yeah, it's kind of just is what it is.
Yeah, this is where because since he goes to Arkansas week 1. I think that's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely.
And it's just you would think, man, what a time to be able to put in a game or 2 extra to really bump their chances up. You would think the conference would want that too, to get an extra money grab with a guy in the playoffs or a bigger bowl.
When you see this in college basketball where they hold back weeks and they do the whole play the top teams play each other, bracket buster, whatever you want to call it type thing, to try to get more games on the schedule. And you've heard of some college football conferences talk about this, or maybe not the conferences, but writers speculate what could happen. And they talked about if these conferences merge and do these different things, what you could do is hold back a week and your top teams play each other at a certain week late in the season. You already designate who's home, so the fans know on traveling. They just don't know where they're going on the road until 2 weeks before or something. It might be a little chaotic for the fans, but something like that would give you the opportunity to say we guarantee an extra big game for some of our teams down the stretch. Could be really big, but nothing like that exists right now in football, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately for sure, because this would have been nice to put this game on the schedule.
Yep. And so the other one, of course, the other team, of course, Cincinnati, also with that same win total of 9, a little bit more juice on the over, but kind of the same setup with the way their schedule bounces, like you said, at Arkansas. Home against Indiana is not a gimme, but the other 2 non-conference games are. They do have to go to SMU, but their schedule breaks a little bit easier than Houston's does in general. Another team that, they probably can get to 10 wins, right?
Yeah, I don't see how they don't, to be honest. They're returning what was rated as the conference's best offensive line. So you put a guy that can really you're not going to get Ritter production, but you get something close to that. Add that in the LSU running back transfer plus what they're bringing back. I think they are going to be absolutely a force to reckon with again. It's just the defense may not be as nasty as it was last year.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine it being that good just because.
Yeah. And so many draft picks they lost for a school like Cincinnati. No matter how well they've been recruiting for that level, that's going to be tough to replace those players. Looking at the schedule here, if a play of the over on Cincinnati were to go awry, I can almost tell you exactly where it's going to go awry at. It's going to go wrong between October 22nd and November 5th when you've got at SMU, at UCF. And then our friends, the midshipmen, Navy, waiting for them, coming off back-to-back road games against good teams. That's an enticing little spot for Navy right there.
A Navy team that isn't Navy one that gave Cincinnati all the problems in the world last year. Am I remembering that correctly?
There were about every week for a month straight. And
that's
AAC
true. That's true.
Cincinnati
The last week of the season
time.
it wasn't just the one team.
Yeah. So I can't remember exactly. I feel like Tulane was one of the teams that really gave them a hard time. I can't recall the rest, but yeah, if it were to go bad, that 3-game stretch, I think is where it might happen.
And at Tulsa, I feel like is one of those wonky games that, like, coming off the Indiana game may not be as easy as people think. Again, though, it kind of breaks out like Houston's. It's you can see 8, but it's not going to completely fall apart. You got a good chance to push. That's why the over is used so heavily. In a similar situation, I think we all kind of are in agreement, though. We like that over, but the Houston over is probably a stronger look just based off of the fact that Houston – I can't even find a 5th game on Houston I'm worried about. I could at least find a 5th game on Cincinnati's I'm worried about. That gives just one extra maybe landmine that Houston doesn't have to worry about. And we think Houston's – going to be more improved and Cincinnati take a step back, and maybe these two teams are about equal as opposed to last year where Cincinnati was better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think these teams had a chance to really boost their ratings there with 2 games instead of just 1 in the championship or however that one works.
All righty, so that does it for those 3 conferences. Best bets of the things we talked about today. Jake, I'm going to start off with you. What are you giving us for your best bet of these 3 conferences?
I'm going West Virginia over 5.5. I think they have got a really good chance to get to 6, maybe 7. Not too much higher than that. It's going to be fun to watch, especially with the way their schedule breaks for them. And that is a long trip for everybody in that conference to come to the Eastern time zone is about as far east as they can get.
Yep, and at plus 105 odds is never bad either. Cousin Jared, what about you?
We just talked about it for a long time. I like the over 9 on Houston. I just don't see any way that I think worst case scenario, you push on that one. There's a lot of ways that one wins, a lot of ways you win early, and you can go to the end of the season feeling pretty good about it. So I like the over 9 for Houston.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. And in the spirit of not just saying I like what he did there and giving you another one, I will take Virginia under 7.5 at minus 160. You have to go way back to the start of the episode where we talked about that one. Just too many good teams that they're playing. It's a lot of juice, but it's one that it's very difficult to see them getting to 8 wins. And if they do, at least you've watched a lot of fun football in the process. Part of this is about entertainment. So let's root for high-scoring games. Let's root for Virginia to score, sure, but let's root for them to give up a lot of points. I don't think they're going to need our help. They're going to give up a ton. As it should be a lot of fun games to watch. That's always part of the fun thing about the season-long investments. There's sometimes, there's a little extra juice on them, so sometimes it's harder to say they're your best bets necessarily, but sometimes it's just fun to have that rooting interest week in, week out. If you're watching a lot of Virginia football, your life is at least entertaining, right? So worst case scenario, you're entertained. Best case scenario, you're entertained and you win some money. It sounds like a win-win to me, right?
These are great wedding gifts. If you have a fan in your life that's getting married, it's so much fun because then you give them that, you put whatever you're going to spend on the wedding present on the season over, they have a chance to really cash it out or not. Like it's kind of a fun little gift for mainly guys, and they don't really get too many wedding gifts.
Let's get the timestamp on that one.
Yes, I was about to say we're 58 minutes into this, and the most important moment of this entire show's history has just been given to us. I've never considered this a wedding present of a season-long bet. You could do this for any sport, people. What a genius idea! Print out the ticket. Whether a lot of states, you print off your ticket, hand it to them, and say, "Hey, this is it. If it wins, here's how much you win. If not, you're entertained." I mean, my mind is blown now. 58 minutes into the show, and here it is. The moment.
That's why you gotta listen to the whole thing.
You gotta listen to the whole thing. We can never top this moment. We've Cousin Jared, you thought you had it last year going through Christmas movies, but this now is our new moment to top right here. Can you come up with an idea better than a wedding present of a season-long gift? I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I should ask for parting words. That's it. We can't go out. That's it. That's the high note right there.
Yeah.
We are done. That was fantastic. Thank you all. That's all we've got. That's this episode of Picks the Professor. Reminder, check out the Google Sheet for model picks, projections, and results. We got baseball up right now, depending on when you're listening to this. Football will be up at some point. We got all this at the website, www.pickstheprofessor.com. If you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button to ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. We'll see you again tomorrow for part 3, the rest of the conferences. And until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.